Do you have a child with autism, and do you worry about how they will fit in school, or will they be bullied? Of course, in some ways, as parents, we all have those same concerns. The difference is that it's magnified, right? Like the amp is turned up from 4 all the way to 10 when you have a son or a daughter with autism. So that's what we're going to dive into today. And Jen, who's going to come on and share her heart and some of her story, is kind of challenging the norms. So I think you're going to want to stick around and hear what some of those things are, and her journey with her son, Simon, with autism. So my name is Cheryl Bassett, and I am the founder of Unstoppable Connections. I'm an international bestseller and creator of the award-winning Unstoppable Family Meeting Toolkit. I am also your host for this show as part of the Edge Network. Families do tap into something that my family created, which are called the 4 gifts. Those 4 gifts create an unshakable, unbreakable connection that's built on a foundation of trust. So if you would like to learn more about my work and the 4 gifts, you can go to my website, which is unstoppableconnections.com. If you would like to be on the show or have an idea for the show, you can drop us some information or connect on kitchentableconversations.com. Now, I like to set the intention for every show. And this show is designed and will feature the fun stuff to the tough stuff and everything in between. Today, we're gonna have fun, but we are gonna hit into some of the tougher stuff, obviously, with this topic, but it's all designed to ignite a conversation, to strengthen our families, and to create a positive ripple in the world. We do tap into the 4th gift, which is the gift of love, and we unwrap that gift by choosing to celebrate ourselves and others. So it's with that intent. We do every show where we come with an open heart, an open mind, and a true celebration of the person who's taken their time to be with us today and to share their story and to really allow us into their space. So with that, I am going to just do a really quick intro on Jen Weatherly, because she is, I adore her. We've known each other for quite a while. She is a highly intuitive designer, and I know that she's highly intuitive because we worked through that process together, and she helped me with my website. She crafts and shares the stories of others in a brilliant way. Today, we get to dive into Jen's world, though, as a mom with an autistic son. Her work was deliberately created. The work that she does do was deliberately created so that she could be more engaged with her family and have that time that she needs to be available for them. Her willingness to share her journey today is truly a gift for all of us. And so with that, I would like to bring Jen into the show.
Hi, everybody.
How are you today?
I'm really good. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, no, I'm excited to have this topic. And, I went out and I want to do my homework, right? Because I'm not in your space completely. My son does have a really close friend who he's grown up with. And so it's not like I don't have any exposure, but I don't have a son or a daughter with it. So, I went out and got this book. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, that you recommended, right? And it's very enlightening. I haven't gotten through the whole thing, but just what I've read so far, which I just, you just don't know what you don't know. So today I'm here as truly somebody too that came to learn, because I know that obviously you're in the middle of this journey. So, but I also know you're doing it differently, and I kind of want to kind of talk about that too. So, so I don't, maybe the start point is, and you can certainly pick a different one, but like that, when that moment was that you knew, maybe that's a defining moment, right? That there was something unique about your child. But then when was the defining moment that you knew you could do something different?
Okay, well, actually, we were in speech therapy, and the speech therapist is like, okay, well, I'm going to put him on this program. And after a couple sessions, I was like, this is the autism program, isn't it? And she's like, yes, it is.
Okay.
And it was just that, okay, dead stop. We didn't have a diagnosis. So when she said that to me, I did go and get that book that you just showed.
Okay.
And I read it from front to back. And when we did get the diagnosis, I was like, well, it's okay because we can make it so he'll be fine. So there was never, I never was anchored into that I'm stuck in this situation, that he won't grow from it. I knew that I had some really seriously great tools right at my fingertips, and that we could get through this to a point where he would be very active in his own life.
Yeah, because you're right. The very first story shared in this book, right, talks about this, like this person who went through it saying she was told, well, this is as good as it's going to get. It's not going to get her. And she was like, well, that's not good enough. Right. And she kept it. But I started this because I thought this might be like where you can share some too. It's no one little thing like what made the difference. It was really all the little things combined that helped a lot. Right. So it wasn't just like one thing you did and like that fixed everything and made it okay. It was all the little things that added up to a big change.
Yeah, so we were really, really very consistent about ABA therapy. I had him, didn't matter if I was sick or he never was sick, but
say the therapy again. It's
ABA.
ABA.
Yeah, and it's kind of the standard treatment, even though there are others. They do some occupational health, but I knew that we were not going to get any therapy in the town that we lived. And I asked my husband to get a transfer to another province. And we were able to get the ABA therapy on a part-time level, and that was as good as it was going to get. So,
yeah. So that was where you started. Mm-hmm. And then what were some of the so when and this is where I don't want to ask a silly question because I don't really know that I'm asking it correctly, but basically like so your son was obviously having some speech issues in the beginning.
Yeah, he couldn't, he was doing a lot of echolalia, which means that you would say something and he would parrot it. So he was just walking around saying the same thing over and over.
Okay.
And you couldn't talk to him. So that was a huge problem.
Right.
And we still had that even through ABA therapy until I started him on CBD therapy.
Okay.
And at the time, I didn't really know about tinctures, and the products were not as available as they are now, well, especially in Canada. But we were just using a powdered CBD mixed into some peanut butter on a very gradual scale until one day I hit on day 5, and I gave him his dose and came up an hour later to his room, and he started telling me a full story about Iron Man. And all the details that
I just got yeah.
I know. I was like, whoa.
Okay. So I want to back up a second. So how old was your son when you got this diagnosis from just like they put him into the autism piece? What age was he?
2.
He was 2. Okay. And then what age was he when you did the CBD therapy that you're talking about?
He was probably about 3.5.
Okay, so you went through some things prior to that.
Yeah. I'd taken him off gluten prior to that. We'd started ABA therapy prior to that. We'd moved to a different province to get help. So there was a lot of things that happened, and I said, this isn't really getting us anywhere. And that was a massive catalyst for us to get. To help him learn in the ABA therapy, so the behaviors actually were able to be taken in, and also he stopped tapping as much because that was one of his stims. Even though there's lots of different stims, that was one of his. Okay, and there was just so many things, and the generative language didn't come until around 5, where we would have a back and forth conversation. But around that 3.5 years. He started recognizing us as his family and saying that outright. And I was just, that was just priceless for me. It was hard to explain, but.
Yeah. So I want to back up because I know, it's funny because today's my day of like tapping into things that people sort of like don't know a lot about. Maybe you're even a little bit wary of. The CBD is one of them. I just had somebody on before you though, talking about 5G and our EMF and all that, where I know that there's just like so much misinformation out there about it. But the CBD is a space that, that I've just heard so many amazing things about. I've obviously used some CBD myself. So just wondering like that I assume you still have him on the CBD, and have you continued And for those of you who don't know what CBD is, right? Maybe I'll let you explain that because I'm not sure I would do it justice. But what is the CBD? And then what is it been a progressive improvement after he started that?
Yeah. So with CBD, that's so they'll grow the hemp fields, or there can be they'll grow special flowers like Charlotte's Web is a certain flower that's a high CBD, low THC. And so the hemp flowers that we grow in our fields up here for just plain old hemp seeds can be used the same way. And so they'll harvest just the flower portions, and that's what we were using for our CBD. So it was just kind of ground down to a powder, and we used that.
So you're not getting your son high.
No.
I know that. I'm just like making sure everybody understands that, because I think there's so much misinformation out there about how that CBD, is created. So.
Oh my goodness. At the time I was giving it to him, I felt like, like the cops were going to come and knock on my door and take my kids away.
Yeah.
Because it was very harsh at that time. And I was being very renegade by doing what I was doing. However, I got results that were outstanding, and now I get to be more of a freedom fighter for the effects of what, we got. So.
Yeah. So this is fascinating. See, I knew that the CBD was part of it. I didn't realize the dramatic, like you and I hadn't talked as much about the dramatic impact that it's had. So that's really interesting. And your son now is how old?
He's 9, and he plays hockey, and he's in French immersion, and he makes friends. He's popular, and I'm just like, whoa, man, I didn't really expect this much improvement.
Yeah.
And to answer a question you just asked just previously, he only gets CBD maybe once a month. When I can really tell his system is, and you can tell in an autistic, their energy, it's like it's frayed or it's spazzy. And so they'll actually spaz out or throw a tantrum or have an inability to understand what you're saying to them, or they won't be able to pay attention. These are all different traits, and I can tell. So he'll just get a small dosage when I can see that, but he monitors it. So I ask him, he says yes or no. It's very much up to him. So
he's in tune, obviously, with it very much as well.
And I remember early on, he would say weird things like he didn't really understand his body and what his body messages were telling him. And as I grew to understand what that was meaning, so he would have different symptoms to say something else was happening. But I learned more about that in a book called The Reason I Jumped.
Jump, okay.
Yeah, and that one's by Naoki Higashida. Oh, okay. That was a terrible pronunciation of his name.
Hopefully he's never going to hear you. And email.
And it was written, the inner voice of a 13-year-old boy with autism.
Oh,
and in this book, he explains how it feels like you don't even belong inside your body, and how strange things actually feel, and they're always trying to get out of their body, which the running away thing is part of that. He explains it in here, that's how he was always trying to run away from his body. Mm-hmm. And we know that autistics, they'll take off. And it's because they're not comfortable inside their body. And I know that the CBD helps them be more comfortable in their body, because all of that went away when we started giving it to him.
Wow. So when we talked about sort of breaking down the illusions of autism, obviously we talked about that from the perspective of, you're a parent with a child that's autistic. I think from someone so I find all this fascinating, right? Because like David had a friend, and I remember one time we took his friend, Avery, to a football game, and just all the stimulation of, and it was a little league football game. It wasn't like Ohio State football game, which would be really crazy. But it was still too much. It was over stimulus for him. So when you talked about the fact that the amp of the needle goes from a 4 to a 10, I saw that firsthand what that looks like. So I think there's a lot of information that people, you know, like myself, that just need to know. So what are some, do you think are some of the misconceptions that people have about children with autism?
Often, yeah. So, and it's hard to see, because what I hear all the time, and so
Right.
everybody, you got to stop saying this. He doesn't look autistic.
Yeah.
Like, God, stop saying that.
Yeah.
Because so he's not walking around staring at a wall, flapping his hands, does not mean that he doesn't have autism. So it looks very different in our, what now we've got a new spectrum. So children that are not, you know, completely locked in and just that stare at walls or TVs or do weird things over and over and over again, that's not the full spectrum at
Right.
all.
So you think about the Rain Man, right?
Yes, and
Yes.
that's what everyone expects.
Yes. Okay. Gotcha.
So what we end up seeing in going into the mall is a child throwing a tantrum that's beyond a tantrum, and we think it's the parent, or but that child is so overwhelmed that they could be autistic, they may not be, but when we're in our society and we see somebody not acting normal, we start accusing in our heads and judging them when we don't really know the full scope of the problem.
Right.
And that goes for any mental disorder that we're watching happen in public. From PTSD, from somebody that cannot be in a space and they really they are running and trying to get out, to anxiety that people are suffering in spaces. And it's just the same way for an autistic kid. The anxiety's in a place where they cannot handle it anymore, and they start acting out. And these things, they just, you know, we need to love each other and make sure that, you know, these people are also led to believe that they're in a safe environment around the people that they're around.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, one of our favorite quotes as a family when we were growing up, and I share it all the time still, and even my kids, like, we talk about it, but when you judge someone, you're not defining them. You're defining yourself as someone who's judgmental. And I think it's as obviously it's one thing to analyze or be an awareness of something, but it's not much deeper thing to be in judgment of it, because you don't know, you haven't walked in their shoes, you don't know the full story. And so often when we do hear the story, then we can kind of go, okay, I can appreciate that space that, you know, somebody might be in that moment, having what, you know, that response. So anyway, I think it's a beautiful thing to really share with people and to step into, you know, kind of not that judgment side of it.
Yeah. And there's a level of self-acceptance that just comes from having a kid that's kind of weird. And he's going to make funny sounds, and he's going to, the funny sounds part is what gets most people. Like, they'll squawk, or mine doesn't make weird sounds. He makes normal kid sounds, and they're loud. And they happen in public often. And so I laugh it off. But, you know, I don't care what other people think.
Right.
However, I've noticed my husband going, oh, these people were staring at you for not controlling that. And I'm like, I do not care, because they're not accepting themselves first for, you know, their own humanity. There's other people. We're all different. It's always about them. Yeah.
Right.
And I don't care.
So there's the wisdom for the parent who's in the middle of all this, right? Like,
yeah,
we need to really just, and we all need to do that anyway, right? We literally just need to live our lives in a way that feels authentic and real and in alignment and in harmony with who we are and our children, and not care about what anybody else really is thinking. As long as, you know, I mean, as long as we're not out hurting people, which we're not, but you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, like, and being able to laugh at some things, you know, that what might horrify somebody else, just laughing it off. And the laughter goes a long way, because you can put yourself right into a childlike phase. And often that's how we connect best with our autistic children. And I know one of the Sunrise programs, it's SONRISE, and that's like an ABA program, but it's what's recommended by occupational therapists.
Okay.
And it's getting down onto that childlike level, playing the games with them like they do, talking like them so that they connect with you. And then you have a bridge now. And
Right.
it's often humor or just being childlike.
I love that. So you're bridging. So in some ways, you create the connection into your child's world somewhat to understand and connect. But then that you, in the process of doing that, you build that bridge, and then that allows them to connect over on the other side as well. So you're bridging that gap that kind of gets created between the two worlds, and you're connecting them. Is that a
Yeah.
fair?
Yes. And that is how we connect with everybody,
It
right?
is.
So
It's just magnified. Yeah, right. In terms of creating the connection initially, it might be a little more of, you know, a different journey that you have to take to get there, right? And experience. So
yeah, really getting outside of ourselves, and for those relationships that we definitely want to merge with, and trying to experiencing life from a different angle, and it's just so important.
so what I hear from you, which I love, because everybody, I mean, there's always these challenges out there, right? But if we always want to move from the energy of the problem or challenge or whatever you want to call it into the energy of the solution. And what I hear today coming from you is that just because somebody maybe is getting this diagnosis does not mean there's not a lot of hope and a lot of journey that can happen that's just extraordinary and beautiful at the same time, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's been so rewarding, all of it. Even though there was times where I really just wanted to walk up a mountain and stay there for a whole week by myself.
I feel like that
For
too.
real.
But yeah, I know.
I know. It's real, but I think that that's the other part of it, is that caregivers need to take time for themselves.
Yeah.
Because in every situation. But when it becomes amplified, when you're not dealing with a 4 and you're dealing with a 10, now when you deal with them, but now you need to go and take time for yourself and go inward and find it wherever you can. Maybe it's just so a block of time after everyone's in bed, but maybe you get to extend that out to a longer period of time where you actually get to not have to deal with any of it. So
Right. Let me touch on one thing, and then I want to kind of talk about parents who are sitting down at the table for the very first time, and they've just found this out, and what you would recommend, what book, like, is it the book I just read, which book, those kinds of things. But you have other children, so it's not like you can just and I know you've built your business so that you could be home, right?
That's right.
Which is beautiful. But I'm assuming you've also had to do some understanding of how, when you have a child that maybe takes up some additional energy in space and time, how that impacts the other children as well. And how have you navigated that piece?
Okay. I think that this is where I went rogue, because I compared myself to some other people so I could understand what was happening in their world. Mm-hmm. And they would cater to the autistic child. Everything was revolved around, everything they needed was catered to. And I refused to do that. Yeah, okay. So perfect. They were in our family. They were to do things the same way that we were all doing them, even though every child has their own cool thing that they are. That's fine. However, I didn't care if I'm going, like, we have a lot of festivals in our area. So I'm going to the festival and all of y'all are coming with me. And even though he'd walk around screaming, he's not actually injured.
Right. The overstimulation of it.
Yeah. And I don't care. So I kept him there with me, and he eventually got used to going. Mm-hmm. And then he'd start rocking out with the crowd. And it took a lot of time and continually going to markets, like outdoor markets where it's packed. It's so packed. And it's important because it broke it down to the point where we would just go in, do a circle, come back out. Okay, that was market day. I grabbed a piece of pepperoni. I'm solid, right?
Yeah.
And then next time it's like, you want to go to the market? He's like, yeah, sure. And I know we can only stay in for a little bit. And then, music festivals are big around here. So there's lots of jazz festivals, and I would make him I wouldn't make him go in the tent. Like he's not actually having hearing problems from the music. He's just too much happening.
Right.
So we go in and we do it for 15 minutes. And then I'd take him down the street because I shut all the streets down. And then I'd get him something for doing that, like, pizza or whatever it is. And then we'd go to another venue because they're all over the place. And eventually he got really good at doing these big public events. And other parents were like, oh, no, we don't do that. No, he would lose his mind. And I was like, yeah, but it's part of a behavioral training.
Yeah, right. And something that eventually he actually enjoyed.
Yeah, now I take him to stuff and he's like, oh man, this is really good music, and he likes it. So, and anytime we get to go down to a festival, he's all over it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you, well, I love it. You broke the mold. I think that's great for people to hear, because obviously it's paid off huge for you in terms of him. Just like you said, he's playing hockey, and what would you say, he's in some kind of French?
Yeah, so in this province, we have French immersion programs straight through.
Okay.
My totally normal daughter did not want to do it, but he was totally into it. So we did it.
Beautiful.
And he's doing fine.
So that's cool. So, I wanted to talk about just that interaction with the siblings, but now let's say I'm a family, because, the whole goal of this show is to really, offer a family that opportunity to sit down and have. And of course, I think yours is probably a topic that's going to be, the parents only, maybe not, maybe it's the kids that, are engaged to, but for sure the parents. So they're sitting down, they've just found this out. What would be the first thing that you would encourage them to do? What would they read? What would they plug into from your perspective?
Well, I mean, it's a complex thing, right? So we're on a spectrum, and their child has their own traits and everything else. And so, I mean, Autism Revolution was great because it's like, doesn't matter what that complex situation is, you could probably clean it up with an amazing diet. Maybe you're taking out some gluten, maybe you're taking out dairy. But yes, diet plays a huge role.
Okay, so that's this book, which we shared earlier, which is the Autism
Revolution.
So that's that book, and then
but it's also,
go ahead.
And it's also mindset too. Like, where are you at in the way you think about autism? So that one straightened me out to the point where I was like, no, I can definitely affect how this is going to play out, even though it was an uphill battle, and it is an uphill battle. So. If your son or daughter has been diagnosed with autism, I hope that you have services in your area. I've mentioned 2. So if you get ABA therapy, fantastic, but you can do good in-home therapy with Sunrise program. And then, grab some books. Like there's so many.
There's a lot out there. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many cases of really great success, and you really do need to know how to kind of go about it. There is a website called Project CBD, and you could look up autism on there and everything else. And those are the studies that have been done with CBD and autism. And also inside of that Autism Revolution book, it talks about your nerve pathways and how the frequency is so frayed. There's something going on with the frequency. And the second she said that, we had right away in the news the Charlotte's Web and the little girl with the seizures. That came out. And I was like, so autism, may be this like minute, unseen miniature seizures happening all the time. They're incapable of actually progressing. So that was my basis for putting him on it. And I do suggest doing some research and seeing if that's right for your family, and obviously doing some testing, one little drop to see how they react, and on yourself too, because you want to know what's happening.
Right. Right.
Right. And you know what? It's not something. It can be something that is definitely going to hold them back. But there's going to be parts of that are also incredibly rewarding. But just at that little crux between 3 and 5, the exponential growth that happens can really be multiplied by, some really great therapies all at the same time.
So the diet, not being afraid to just get out and expose them to the normalcy of life and what other, and what's right for your family, especially when you have other children involved, but just being able to still do things, because you don't want to just, like you said, cater 24/7. Getting the resources in place and checking out the CBD again. Maybe it's for them, maybe it's not. Maybe it'll help, maybe it won't. But there's a lot of people who would swear by the CBD. So I mean, you can't deny that. So I would absolutely encourage people to just at least check that piece out for sure. And then. I was just trying to think what else we might like. So they're sitting down, they're having this conversation, they're working through it emotionally. But I think the hope piece, obviously that book, you felt like that was what really kind of took you from, yes, here's the issue, I'm already in the solution of it.
Yeah, I was already in the solution and was already working on things because we all knew. Mm-hmm. But another thing I wanted to point out is that we really immersed ourselves into nature, and nature is free, and you can just go. Mm-hmm. You can just do that. You can just immerse yourself in it, and in water, hiking in trails that maybe you've never seen before, just exposing yourself. And everybody always asks me, like, how do you get your kids to hike for 45 minutes? It's like, well, it takes an hour and a half.
It takes an hour and a half, but we get 45 minutes of a trail done. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And my husband and I have gone another time and we're like, whoa, this is a really short track. And we just didn't know what to do with all the time we had left over. But, you have to have a lot more patience as, young parents. And this is just something we all learn as parents. Mm-hmm. When we're the patience factor, the slow walking, the extra 15 minutes it takes for an autistic to put their clothing on. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And some of the things can be infuriating, but if you yourself can stay in a good heart space, mm-hmm. Then you might just make it. And I think that autistics are so sensitive to your heart space and the energy that you're in, that you can make such a huge effect on how they react to you just mm-hmm. by staying in that space. So when I'm well meditated, or have taken the time for myself, I can see an immediate improvement in my autistic son. And if I'm starting to get frayed, he does not know what to do, and he starts peaking, like screaming, like actual screaming and ranting and doing all these kinds of things. And I'm like, oh gosh, mm-hmm. he's my meter to say where I'm at. Yeah. And it all comes from you.
Yeah. One of the things I used to always say is that the more that I live in my joy, the more my children could live in theirs. And I think that's true, right? It's just, again, it's even more of the reward that comes in probably when you have, someone like the autistic child, because they're even more in tune. They're really more in tune, right? With all of that, yeah. Right? Because the energy hits them in a much bigger and different way. So I think that's interesting. And the other thing I was thinking about too, because I just did a show earlier about, EMF, and people think all EMF, if they start to think, oh, it's all bad because it's cell phone and it's, our TVs and our internet and all that kind of stuff, right? But there's an EMF that comes from the earth that it's our electromagnetic field, and it's so important for us to be in that. And so when you're getting out in nature, right, I'm sure that, and plus we were talking about how everybody now wears shoes and we have rubber soles. I'm looking for a really good pair of moccasins because, like that I can go out and walk in, but also just get out and don't go out in the snow if it's freezing, but you know what I mean? But like get out and really connect. But she was even saying like touch a tree, just connect with the energy that the earth gave us. And I'm sure that's why that walking thing for your family, is probably it's good for all of us, but I'm sure you find great value from that for your son.
Yes, absolutely. And yes, take their shoes off. Yes, take their socks off, go play in the waves. Yeah. If your clothes get messed up, that's fine.
Yeah, who cares, right? Yeah.
And so many parents, I watch them and they stop their children from playing in waves. I'm just like, why? Because they didn't bring an extra change of clothing. Maybe just let them take it off then. And,
Yeah.
or bring a change of clothing. I don't know where you are. Like if it's a hugely public beach, like,
Yeah. Well, you
underpants
don't want
might
to
be
get
okay,
arrested. So
but
that's not good because.
but I've just watched parents be like, no, you can't go in the water. You can't do this. No, no, no. And I'm just like, whoa, they're in nature and you stop them from going all the way.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, so just pack a towel. Like that's all you have to do. My kids all know they have to bring a change of clothes when we go anywhere.
Yeah.
So they just pack it
Perfect.
and a bottle of water and we have one towel. That's it. And like, that's our kind of like, I know you guys call it bug out. That is our adventure bug out gear. And they know that that is what's required for us to go. And then they can do whatever they want.
Yeah. It's free. It represents being free when you're out there enjoying and, and oh my gosh, yes, you're right. I hear no, no, no. And the truth is that we need to stop putting the lid. We need to get rid of the box right around our children because they are so, like in tune and connected and we can learn so much from them. So anyway, I think it's and I see your posts all the time on Facebook where you guys are out like there she goes again, she's out in the water again, and I think it's just great. So so we are at our magical time. We're a little bit past even, but this has been just I think amazing conversation and so valuable for anyone who's listening, not just if you have a son or daughter with autism, but just seriously anyone who's, because obviously it's part of our world we live in. So, but we like to end every show with a dot, which is a drop of thought. And I know that you had one you wanted to share, and then I just close every show with it. But what is the dot you wanted to just share with everyone today?
Well, I just want people to be more present in the now and to really just the process of getting to wherever you're supposed to go is like it's the good stuff. It really is, and in many cases it's the stories that you'll tell your kids when they're older. So it's just take some time and just really revel in these moments that you have because they're absolutely precious.
Yeah, if you think about it, the stories you remember the most from your childhood or growing up or whatever aren't the ones that went perfect. It was the ones that were probably more unique, different, and maybe didn't go as planned. Right? Yeah. So those are the ones you remember. If it just runs smoothly, you kind of go, So
yeah.
Day, but so enjoying the journey for sure. Thank you. Thanks for coming on and sharing. I think you've helped a lot of people, and I really think your story's amazing. And I love that you break all the rules. I think it's great. So you rebel you. Anyway, thanks for being here and sharing with us today. I close every show with a dot, and it's the same one just because it's really near and dear to me. But in a world where we can be anything, be kind. Thanks, Jen. Yeah. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
I'll see you later. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.